Welcome to the Tech Quarterback Show. I'm your host, Brent Chapman. This is the show that gives you a front row seat inside the huddle with the leaders of driving innovation, building teams, and keeping businesses moving forward. As I would say, your technology's quarterback. On today's show, we will discuss leadership, culture, talent development, and what it takes to build high-performing teams in the technical world. Today, we're joined by a seasoned technology executive with more than 25 years of experience and over 2 decades leading technology teams that has helped scale and modernize organizations like Smoothie King and Unleashed Brands. Joining me to discuss that and more from Wax Center, Chief Information Officer, Chris Andrew. Chris, welcome to the show. I guess before we jump in, tell us a little bit about your current role as Chief Information and Digital Officer at European Wax Center.
Yes, I joined in March of 2025, so just under a year now. For 2025, it's really all about a reset and teeing up our digital initiatives and transformation for 26. So we've had a lot of data insights. We've uncovered a lot of things that we think are going to be impactful for our franchisees and for our brand. And as a bonus, I'm reunited with a couple other executives that I used to work with.
That's awesome.
One was at Smoothie King. The other was from Chuck E. Cheese and On the Border. So it's kind of a nice little reunion.
It's always fun. I've always enjoyed, Chris, and I kind of done this intentionally, is I love bringing people with me or working together with people that I've worked for in the past. Our jobs, the jobs as technology executives, aren't particularly easy, and work isn't meant to be horrible. It's supposed to be fun. So working with people that you enjoy and know and have, collaboration with is helpful. And it sounds like you're experiencing that at EWC as well.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. So before we get into technology, I always like to learn a little bit about, your background, leadership, technology, sports, etc. So I want to start with your sports background. So you played soccer through your sophomore year at Texas Wesleyan and also coached. I assume that was when you were little with kids and stuff, which tells me competition and teamwork have always been part of your life. So tell me about your experience playing collegiate soccer. How did playing competitive soccer shape the way you think about teamwork, accountability, and leadership, especially now as a senior executive?
Yeah, so I think some of my lessons I'm going to come out are probably a little bit different than some of the other accomplished athletes you've had on your show before. So first of all, when I got to Texas Wesleyan, I thought like, man, I'm in great shape. I've been playing on these great high level teams, winning leagues. And this is no lie, my very first 2-a-day there, I went back and threw up at the dorms. And I was like, I was like shocked. I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then we start getting into our first practices, and like, these guys are beasts. I mean, people are coming for your head. And so, for the 2 seasons I was there, I dealt with tons of injuries. And this may have been a sign of working at European Wax later, because I had ankle issues. And so I always used to shave my from the knee down. And so just for all the tape, because I used to get both ankles taped all the time. And so I think 1 was a lesson of being a little too overconfident. And then 2, not being prepared for the kind of competitiveness that's out there once you're free from that like high school and club bubble. And then I think last, the reason that I stopped playing after my sophomore year is that I had to have a little bit of a gut check with myself and say, hey, this is a lot of time. And you have to do way more than what's in practice to start earning playing time. Do you have that in you, or do you have that desire? And I think we both know in all parts of your life, if you don't have that desire to do something that requires extra work and that's hard, you're not going to be successful at it. So maybe a little anticlimactic of a collegiate career.
I like something that you brought up that I think is very important in a corporate environment, which is you came from a situation in high school or even your town where it's like, yeah, I'm the big deal, I'm on the great team, and then you go into a new environment. Sometimes they can be a different high school, they can be a different college, right, or whatever, and it's like, wait a minute, this is not anything like I was really good or really comfortable here, and this is completely different. I think that happens a lot in corporate life too, in jobs. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I think, part of, especially I've seen it in my career, is I've scaled brands over the years and gotten more responsibility, bigger budgets. It stretches you every time you do something like that.
It's different. Those different experiences though make us better, but it also kind of hits us with the reality of where we stand and what we need to do to improve. And I think you hit on it, is to be able to perform at that higher level, the work and effort that it would have taken to put in to do that, might not have been equitable for the outcomes that you were going to get out of it, right? And so that's great. Um, you didn't come into technology through a traditional computer science path. You studied accounting, played competitive soccer, and built a career that spans restaurant, health, franchising, and consumer brands. How did you first get into technology, and what pulled you from a business and finance background into leading IT and digital organizations?
So I have a pretty interesting background, and I'm thankful being a Gen Xer that I can do this, as you can see by my white hair on the side. So I first got into technology in 1985. So I was 10. My dad has been in technology since the 70s, and I was
Wow.
online playing checkers against kids in the United States and Canada on Quantum Link. My dad would be on CompuServe. I was on Quantum
Wow.
Link. And so I've grown up around
So you were
technology.
introduced to it way early. I don't think I knew what the internet was till the mid 90s.
Oh, even when I was in my undergrad, I had computers set up at my house, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, you have a computer?" I'm like, "Yeah, I have a whole bunch. Let's have a LAN party and play Duke Nukem and Doom." Let's have some Quake
Nerd.
parties. Exactly, yeah. But here's what's interesting is that I being around technology, like, pretty much my whole life. When I got to college, all of the degrees were so development, programming
Yeah.
focused. And I took a couple of the classes. I'm like, man, I don't like programming that much, and I don't want to be a programmer. And then all the other classes were really, because everything was like kind of so new still. And right in the 90s, like there was so much happening in technology that a lot of those degrees and those paths had not caught up yet, right? They were still focused on old development, old AS400 mainframe stuff. And so, like, I really didn't have an interest in going down that track. And so that's why, I graduated with a general business degree. And then I got into doing field training for a company out of Atlanta. And then for full circle, I get into public accounting because of my technology background. And while I was there, I'm like, hey, man, I think I might want to be a partner here. And I need to go sit for my CPA. So I went back to school to get a master's in
Wow.
accounting to have enough hours for it. But yeah, I've always had that passion for technology. And it really just kind of furthered it even more when I got into consulting.
So I want to dive into this because I didn't know this. So you went back to school and got a CPA so you could be more accounting focused. Then how did you transition into technology leadership?
So this is, I
This is
know.
fantastic.
I know it is pretty funny. So, yeah. So, and I'm crazy while doing this because, mind you, when I decided to go back for my master's, I had baby twins, and so they were not even one maybe at the time. Okay, so yeah, I've got tons of time. I'm doing consulting. Let's just go get a master's in accounting degree. So I do that, and while I'm doing it, a friend of mine had called me and said, "Hey, if why don't you come work with me? You don't have to travel anymore. It's going to help you get your master's degree." And so I said, "Hey, that sounds great." So I took a little break, thinking I'm going to go get this. I'll go sit for the CPA exam, and then I'll go back to into public accounting. And so we all know, like, you start making plans in the future. And something
Yeah.
can change tomorrow. And I happen to meet my current boss now. I met him when he was at Chuck E. Cheese, and he said, "Hey, I love your consulting background. I need someone to come in here and help me transform our technology stack here." And funny enough, like he had offered me like a project manager role, and I said, "Hey, I'm kind of beyond that in my career. Like
Yeah.
I have aspirations to maybe run my own shop one day." And he said, "Hey, listen, if you do what you think you can do, then you'll be able to run IT here one day." And so I said, "Okay, that's great." And then 4 months later, he resigns, and I'm like, "Oh no, what's going on here?" And he said, "Hey, I'm taking over on the border, so let's accelerate you running IT, and you can come do that over here."
Oh,
Yeah.
so then you just went with him over to On the Border.
Yep. Yeah. My first year at On the Border was my last year in grad school. I finished that up. Twins at the time were three when I
Gee.
finally finished that program. That one was rough because that last year, I had to get to the office around 6 in the morning because I was taking night classes. Like I didn't do online; it was all brick and mortar.
Oh, so you had to go in. Yeah, that's actually when I did my master's, it was the same thing. It was really before all the remote learning. Now, when I finished, they had started going to some of that stuff, but yeah, that's difficult. You're driving. I had young kids too when I did my MBA, and you're driving back and forth. It's not easy. And you've got books that you've got to actually read.
Yeah,
Dude,
now
that's an
thankfully my wife was my wife's an accounting professor and she's an ex Big Four accountant. And so she was able to start helping me through, a lot of tutoring to help me get through the program.
tutoring. Tutor. Is that for she helped with the homework a little bit?
Hey, listen, she's like, man, that lawn looks awfully long out there. I wish I could help you with
with the yeah, exactly, right, yeah, because I'm sure the last thing an accounting professor wants to do is help with accounting homework.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
It's like a bartender mixing drinks at home, right? It's like it's not quite as much fun.
No, not at all.
um so you've been thank you for sharing. That's phenomenal. Just quickly, I want to talk about coaching a little bit. You've also been a coach, and I think there's a parallel from moving from an individual contributor to an executive leader. What did coaching teach you about that playing didn't necessarily teach you, and how does that show up today and how you mentor and develop your teams?
So one, that there's more to coaching than just yelling. Uh,
Are you sure?
I don't know. Listen, it took me a while to get that one
some
figured
some
out.
of the some of the coaches that coach my kids might not be aware of that.
I know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like I wasn't as bad as Bobby Knight, like throwing stuff on the field, but I'm a passionate dude. Yeah. So I think besides that, it's really what was so eye-opening is that like I felt like I have a passion for soccer. I know soccer. But when you start coaching it, I always looked at it through the lens of where I played, and I played a six. I was a defensive guy. I had the field in front of me. Which you could say that's a lot easier to play than with your back to a goal like a
Yeah,
forward or a nine or a winger has to do. And so when I started really coaching, I was studying. I'm reading books.
yeah,
There's a lot of famous European coaches that put out books on their methodology.
yeah.
Johan Cruyff, Pep Guardiola. And so even though these kids are little, so I'm studying all these books from these European managers. I would scale everything down so that they each understood their assignment. And I would send out weekly where their positions are, and then I would show them their run paths, and then I would tell them here are your goals for each and every game. And so I did that as they got older, and I'm
That's good.
parents, sit down with them, make sure they understand the expectations.
That's great. That's a great parallel. I'll say I also coached out of college. I coached a varsity high school soccer team for 2 years, and I learned very quickly. I wasn't a very good teacher, but I was really of skill. But I was really good at strategy and team concepts and managing and leading a team, which are all skills, obviously, that you can translate into corporate environment. What I did for the skills, which is actually what you do in corporate when you don't know how to do something, is I brought on assistant coaches that knew how to do those things and could teach
Right.
those things. I think that's a great parallel to the same thing in the work. When we don't know how to do, we bring in somebody that offers that skill set as well, right? And they can offer that.
Oh
So,
yeah, 100%. I mean, and you get back to I was joking about the yelling thing, but we've all worked with somebody that's a command and
yeah,
control. They feel like the louder they bark at you, the more stuff you're going to get done. And I think too, and it's funny, I've had this argument at different conferences. Like I've been on a panel where I've had the exact opposite view as some of my other peers. When the question comes up, how technical does the CIO need to be? And I always say, listen, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but you need to be a jack of all trades, and you need to know enough that you can go deep enough to challenge them. But just like you said, you're hiring people that to be the expert. Like I'm not trying to be the best at
that's right.
development and security and infrastructure, program management, but I have to know enough about all those areas that I can be a sounding board to my folks and then also be able to help guide them, but then also be able to pressure test some of the things that they're wanting to do.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. You've got to have a base level of knowledge in sort of all the areas as a CIO, but I don't want to micromanage my team. I hire them for their skill set,
Yep.
right? They're the expert. But you're right, you do have to be able to call BS when it's time to call BS, right? And that's sometimes difficult because you're never going to really, you can't be an expert in every area. So completely understand. Well, Chris, before we jump into the technology side, I'd like to take a short break, word from our sponsor, Qentelli, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Tech Quarterback Show. I'm here with Chris Andrews, the Chief Information and Digital Officer from European Wax Company. And Chris and I have just been talking about his background as a soccer player. No, it did not end in a professional career. And his transition from playing sports in college to becoming a chief information officer, which somehow became an accountant along the way. You'll have to listen to understand how that happened. But now we're going to jump into some questions that are specifically about talent development, building high performing teams. So, Chris, you've led technology organizations across franchise, consumer driven, and growth oriented businesses, from Smoothie King to Unleash Brands. You mentioned On the Border, now European Wax Center. What are some non-negotiables for you when building high-performing technology teams, especially in these fast-moving, brand-centric organizations, and maybe even touch on how that industry also drives that a little bit differently than maybe other industries?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to steal from Patrick Lencioni's ideal team player and expand a little bit on that. And so he had three attributes that he went through in the ideal team player, and that's being humble, hungry, and smart. And for me, humble, I want somebody that's going to come in and not only be good at what they do, but be open to other ways to do things. Also, be able to admit when they've made mistakes or ask for help. That one is really, really important because I've seen so many people fail at some of those points throughout my career, and it doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help the person, and it doesn't help the company. Being hungry in these jobs that I typically try to take on are usually we're either cleaning up a mess or we're doing big transformations or we're doing big migrations or acquisitions. And if you don't have a burning desire to win at every level in that type of environment, that's not the place for you.
No.
You will burn out. You're going to be left behind by the other hard chargers that are surrounding you, and it just won't be good. And then smart for me is really more around EQ. Like I want somebody that is going to be able to build relationships within our department, build them across the other departments. I mean, as we all know, from personal life to professional life, when you build up more goodwill with people, they're willing to give you some grace. But I've been in environments that they don't offer grace because no one's offered them grace.
Yeah, that's right.
And so those three attributes to me are hugely important. And then a fourth one is like, hey, if you're like to have fun and joke around a lot, man, that you've just hit it out of the park for me.
Well, Chris, I'll tell you this. I've known you for a few years now, and that's one of the things I'll say is that I think if I had to say what kind of separates you is whenever I've met anyone on your team or talked to anyone that's worked with you, you make the environment fun. You make it a fun place to work at. So all the things you just mentioned, but also you got to go work there every day. So you shouldn't hate your job and you shouldn't hate the people that you work with. I think that's an important thing for people to consider. And I'd also like to say, I think you touched on it a bit, which is the business is incredibly important, and building trust through the business by how you perform and showing that care for them goes a long way. And having people that understand that, like a lot of technology, like, oh, my job is beep, 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 press. No, it's also how your interpersonal skills are very important as well, and how building the business and relationships work.
Oh,
Um,
100%. I mean, and then you add on a franchise environment to that, and you've just taken everything up a level. I take it very serious that the franchisor brands that I've been with, people are investing in some cases their entire retirement, their entire livelihood in the brand that you're working for, and that's just that raises the game even more, right? That we have to ensure that the things that we're doing are helping to drive revenue, but also help them continue to drive EBITDA in a positive way. And that's a lot of pressure. That's a lot of responsibility. And I make sure when people come in to any franchise organization that I've been a part of, hey, you need to understand like this is not IBM, this is not
yeah.
Fortune 50, where if you have a bad quarter, oh well. You have a bad quarter and some of your locations close, like people are filing bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So you need to wrap your head
The
around that.
business in a lot of ways is a consumer too. It's very much it's a lot tighter relationship because it's their livelihood too. It's not just when as a financial services CEO, the business to me was the call center, the marketing department, or finance, right? Like for in this particular case, your operations team are the actual franchise owners that whose lives are on the line. So trying to build these businesses, so that it takes a different mindset, which is appreciate you spelling out how you need to look at that. Moving on to the next thing I wanted to touch on, which is mentorship and development. You've spent over 20 years not just leading technology, but also obviously developing people under you. And that's really something that I've noticed in my career. CIOs sometimes struggle to scale, right? So, how do you approach mentorship and talent development, particularly preparing the next generation of technology leaders beneath you?
Yeah, I was so blessed to have my dad as a role model for me in this. And he ran a small technology company that he started in the early 90s. And I saw a lot of employees come in and go back out throughout the years there. And I asked him about like, hey, are you worried that you just lost your two top techs or whatever it was? And he said, no, because when I hired them in, I gave them on the job training that they didn't have before. I helped them get certificates. He said, all the while, I'm billing them out and I'm making money off of them. He goes, and I love it when they move on to something bigger and
That's right.
better, and I can bring a whole new batch of people in. And man, that like impressed something upon me that I didn't even realize as a dumb, teenager that it would surface later in my career that I need to care about the people that I've been given the responsibility to help lead, and I need to ensure that I'm doing everything I can to help them along the path, right? And that is not only just being like, hey, let's have fun and let's talk about getting you more money. It's about tapping into who they are as people and what they really want to accomplish. And hey, listen, and I've said you could ask anybody that's worked for me. I've said this time and time again. If I don't have the right role for you here to grow into, I'll help you go somewhere that has that role. And
Exactly.
I've made calls on behalf of people.
So have I.
And my peers, I remember the first couple of times I did that, they're like, "What's wrong with the person?" Like, there's nothing wrong with them. Like they're great. I just don't have a role
They're not a
here for
fit
them.
here for whatever reason. Yeah. I've done that too. I've made calls for people, and I love that transparency in a leader because what it does is it builds a high morale of your team because they trust you and they know you're not just trying to beep, press the buttons, do the job. It's more like I care about you and I want you to succeed and be successful in your career. And if that's with me, that's great. And if it isn't with me anymore, I want to help you be successful.
Yep.
And I love that. And, I think it's important that a lot of leaders miss, and you said it, measure success by the strength of the bench you build, and that now I have a future bunch of CIOs under me that can move on. That's something to take pride in. Also, Chris, today's technology leaders are managing teams that are more distributed than ever, right? Ever since COVID, like in technology, there was remote work prior to COVID, but with the advent of laptops and all this stuff and the ability for great internet at home. But COVID just blew the whole thing up, right? And what have you learned about leading remote and hybrid teams effectively? And how do you maintain culture, accountability, and trust when people aren't in the same room? And as an addition to that question, what I'm curious about is in your specific industry, is it a lot of remote, a lot of hybrid, mostly in the office? Kind of talk to me about those two things.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it'd be foolish to say it's not a challenge. It is. I mean, having that face to face and the water cooler hallway time
Yeah.
is so important. And that's why I try to be intentional with my remote folks of doing those skip levels so
Yeah.
that we can just sit there and talk about just personal stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Whatever. Yeah.
yeah, get to know them more because they don't have the opportunity to just drop in like other people do and say, "Hey, did you see the game this weekend?" And we have some great conversations there. I think the other thing too is making sure that they're engaged through a culture of recognition. Every month I in my staff meeting, I do the usual normal stuff up front where you're talking about business initiatives and everything else, but I end with two awards at the end. And I always make these two awards specific for whatever brand I'm working for. And so here at European Wax Center, the top recognition award we call the Super Smooth Award, and
I love
it's a golden bald eagle. Okay, so no hair on that guy. And I open it up for everybody to start recognizing each other and what they've done from the last time, and then someone wins that award every month. The other award, which is one that, like I really love, is our Yeti Award. So super hairy little
Yeah.
statue of the Yeti, and this one you can only nominate yourself, and it's something stupid that you've done since the last time we were all together, and you'll be
I love that.
amazed. Yeah, that builds up so much of our culture because we know so many dumb things about each other, and listen, the first couple times hardly anybody shares. They're just kind of sit back like, I don't know
Yeah.
what is this award? But then after I start sharing all the stupid stuff I've done, they're like, "Oh, okay, now I can start telling them about, something dumb I did the last time."
And that's great. And that humanizes it a little bit. I love that. And, I find that not only is it good to acknowledge in people, it's just having the conversation makes it fun. And by the way, I dealt with a lot of that. I did coffee with the CIO during COVID, right? Where I tried to I had kind of done that in person, but then it was kind of like, all right, now to try to work with the remote team, and COVID was tough because everyone was remote. So, um, I really appreciate that, Chris. Well, that is some great insight and information, and I really appreciate it. One last fun question before we wrap up that I always ask every guest. And if you've watched the show, you'll know the question is coming. But if you haven't, then you won't, which will be better. Since the show is called the Tech Quarterback Show, who's your favorite quarterback, past or present?
Oh, Jim McMahon, without a doubt, 85
Ah,
Bears.
the punky QB. All right. Why Jim McMahon?
So I'm originally from Chicago, and loved that guy. I mean, he was the first kind of in your face. He's
That's
on
right.
flashed all over the news. I was 10 at the time. So fun story for you. I kept a scrapbook of him when I was little,
That's
and
awesome.
every single picture I could find of him, I cut out.
Cut out
I would dress up as him. I'd have the headband
the
on,
headband. Yeah,
spiky hair, and the sunglasses. And no lie, about gosh, it's probably about 6, 8 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. I took a picture of my scrapbook and I put it on Twitter and I tagged him, and he liked my tweet, and I was
that's
like
awesome.
freaking out. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm probably 40 at the time, but I'm like acting like I'm a 10-year-old again. I'm
Yeah.
like, Jim McMahon just liked my post.
The punky QB, dude, he was crazy. The thing about him that was so awesome was it was in the day, like he was fighting with the commissioner. They told him he couldn't, so he'd write stuff on his headband. That was awesome. Like he was, and it's too bad injuries derailed his career, but he was such a gutty player. Like, into how, like he's not as skilled as the guys today.
Nope.
No way.
But
But
he
he
was
was
perfect for
so
that team at that time. Just amazing.
but a great leader, tough. Uh, I think that's still needed in football. But yes, the athleticism and stuff. But no, that's a great choice. I love it, and he should be in the Hall of Fame. Even
Great.
though
Love that guy.
Hall of Fame for like a different reason than statistically, but just so great. Well, Chris, great choice on the punky QB. Can you do the Super Bowl shuffle?
I just watched it the other day. Listen, you listen, the Bears are good again. So I'm like, oh, maybe
Oh
we'll
no
have
no 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 no
part
no no
two someday.
no. My Bills are gonna take care of you guys this year. I'm not worried about that. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey from your early days on the soccer field to leading digital transformation and technology strategy across some of the most recognized consumer and franchise brands. Your perspective on leadership, culture, mentorship, and building high-performing teams in a modern distributed environment was awesome. And I know our listeners will take away practical insights that they can apply immediately in their organizations. And to our audience, thanks for tuning in, and be sure to subscribe, share your feedback, and join us next time. Until then, I'm Brent Chapman, and this has been the Tech Quarterback Show. Peace.